In this Google Sheets Lesson 7a, I'll be going over creating the different type of charts or graphs, and they are line, bar, column, and pie. And I'll also be going over shapes and how they're inserted in Google Sheets. And this is to address learning objectives 2 and 5 from our syllabus that students will work with Google Sheets to gain proficiency through various projects, and students will learn to input and sort data, create charts and graphs, use this data to predict future trends. That's really where we're at today, is creating charts and graphs and telling a story with that data after you can, show that visually. Turn numbers into a picture. And this is to address standard Montana Technology Content Standard 4, which is apply and refine the skills needed to use communication, information, and processing technologies. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is give credit where credit is due, and I use the NBA.com stats today for some numbers and data to work with. I just copied and pasted it straight out of here into Google Sheets in little chunks in order to have something meaningful to work with. And I also used the ESPN NBA stats at times because each of those different platforms shows them a little differently. One worked better than the other for different types of charts and graphs. So thank you to ESPN and NBA.com. The first thing I'm going to show you is what you'll want to do is highlight your data. So right now I have a points per game from the playoff leaders. So I'm just going to highlight the names of those guys, click and drag through them, and then I'm going to hold the control key and click and drag through the point values. That's because those two data sets are not adjacent. Okay, so what if this was over here and the points were right next to the names? Well, then I could click and drag through both of those at the same time. The control key just allows you to select data areas that are not right next to each other. Okay, so now that it's selected, I'm going to go to Insert, Chart, and it automatically chose what it thought I'd want, which was a nice column chart. You can see it gave me the names already. It gave me a vertical axis that's meaningful between 0 points and 40. And now I have a lot of choices. Playoff leaders versus playoff leaders. I don't think that makes any sense as a chart title, but I can double click in there and I can change it to playoff leaders points per game. And then this one, playoff leaders, really is not what these numbers are. They're actually points. So we'll go ahead and relabel that. And then these are players. So Donovan Mitchell did pretty fantastic. Okay, so there's a column graph that pretty basic, but it tells a story of the top 5 in the NBA for the playoffs this year as far as points per game goes. In chart style, see how this chart editor automatically came up? We had some setup area. We could choose a different chart type, and it gives you an idea of what those would look like. And we'll get to those later in this video. You can make, if your data range didn't quite work out the way you wanted it to, here's where you would switch it, or switch rows and columns. You don't want to do that. That totally screwed up our data, but it is there. It suggests using row 3 as a header. That wouldn't work either. I think it is good right now, but you can switch up your data range and select the cells that you want it to come from with this little box here. And then you would be able to just click and drag through wherever you wanted it. We're good with where it is. And I don't believe we want to stack either. You could stack them in a stacked column chart, but we really don't want to. It doesn't make sense with this data. So now we can go over to the Customize area. Chart style, background color. Maybe we want the background color to be orange like basketball. Why not? And maybe we want, that just took me straight out to chart title. Chart style, maybe we want to switch the font to look a little different. The chart border color, maybe it's a dark. In Excel, you can actually put pictures and gradient colors and things that are a little more fancy, but Sheets works too. Chart and axis titles. So we've already changed that. We can change our title font size to be larger here if we want to. We can bold it, see it changed here. You could even center align it instead. And you could change your text color, which I think I want to do, to be something a little darker, like black. And then we can go down to the series area. We can change them from blue columns to a different color if we wanted to. And we could add data labels so that you can actually see those numbers. I think that looks kind of good. And you could even add a trend line, which really doesn't make sense in this case because these people are not related to trend. You can go to your legend area. You can change. We don't really have a legend right now, and it doesn't really make sense to have one in this. So let's do that later in a different graph. You can change some things on your horizontal and vertical axis. You can change the order so that Donovan Mitchell's over here and Anthony Davis is over here. Why? I don't know. I think it looks better the first way. And you can slant your labels, which just gives more room. Vertical axis, now we're talking about this one. You can change the text color, the label size, font, and grid lines and ticks. All of those ticks are just these little guys that go in the middle of your columns. I don't think it makes a big difference on this chart. So we have made ourselves a column chart. Now let's make another one. I want to move it. Won't let me. Okay. Let's select our assists per game. We'll go up to insert a chart. Oops. Undo. We're going to undo that. Insert a chart. And I don't know why I can't move it. But it's separate. It just wanted to put it in that exact spot. Okay. I can't get my little hand tool to show up, but at least we've got it here. We'll just scroll over a little. And the first thing we're going to want to do is change this to, I promised to show you a bar chart, so we're going to go ahead and switch to bar. And then the rest of these options are pretty much exactly the same as I just showed you before. These are the players, and these are assists. And now you can just see the data relationship between the top 5 of assists per game. And this is playoff leaders, assists per game. And then we can just kind of go through any of the setup that we might want to switch. Rows and columns, again, made no sense on this one. And then customize it the way that we want to in all of these different areas, from chart titles all the way down to grid lines. And vertical axis, legend. It doesn't make sense. We don't have a lot of stuff going on to have that legend. So that is bar and column charts. Line charts are kind of a different story. Line charts make the most sense to use when you have, in my opinion, data over time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these years, or maybe this is just LeBron James playoffs per game stats. So I think it would be interesting to know his points per game. and maybe his minutes as well. So let's go minutes and points. Notice I grabbed those headers too. Let's go insert a chart. And I don't want to do those. I actually want to choose line. And then notice how I don't have an x-axis right now. We are just going to go in there. We're going to select a range and we're going to go like this. Okay. So now it's showing us minutes and points per year, and we can make a few other choices here that will help us, like let's go with our horizontal axis and let's treat the labels as text. It was trying to treat them as numbers, but now that they're text, it really worked out a lot better for us. And I like that. Every one of these years, let's reverse the axis order so that it starts in 2005, 2006 when he came into the league playoff year, first playoffs anyway, all the way down to this year. And other changes we might make, well, we don't have a chart title. Let's go ahead and put this one in. LeBron James, points, minutes, points and minutes per game maybe? Okay. And, you know, you get the idea. Line charts, you can change all the same types of things as we did on the last one. It's all there. It's maybe you want a trend line in this one. See where it's going. His minutes per game overall have went down. His points per game have actually went up throughout time. Isn't that crazy? How those two things could happen? That's why it tells a story. That's what we're doing here. And finally, let's look at pie charts. Pie charts make more sense to show portions of a total. So if I take all of these players from the Boston Celtics and I hold my control key and I put points on there, this is showing their total, like, points per game average. So as a total, the team would have had 109.4 average, but now I want to see who's the biggest portion of that. So I'm going to insert a chart, and I'm going to change it from column, and I'm going to scroll down to pie. So now you can see each one of these players has been labeled with the percentage of their team's points. Tatum, 20.6. Brown, 17.5% of their team's points. Walker. It's kind of cool to see who their biggest contributors are, and that's what I think a pie chart shows you the best. Celtic player points as a percent of total. So it really just shows you who the biggest contributors are visually. Pie charts are pretty cool that way. So we looked at pie, we looked at line, and we looked at bar and column charts. And the last thing I wanted to show you today was shapes. Shapes are tricky. You actually have to go up here to insert a drawing to find your shapes. And then they're here. One of the shapes I use pretty often is an arrow. So say I wanted to insert just a regular old arrow. I would do that here. And then I would go save and close. And then it puts it in. But it's a lot of steps to insert shapes. But they are cool. And it's there. And we are almost out of my 15-minute time frame. So this has been your little tutorial on charts and graphs and where the shapes are located. So I hope you enjoy your hunting for data and telling a story with it.